Good afternoon. This is the Tuesday, November 17th work session, Marion City Council, and I would open a motion to appoint Will Brandt to fill the remaining term of Cody Crawford's Ward 3 seat.
Your Honor, I make a motion to nominate Will Brandt to fill Cody Crawford's seat for Ward 3.
May we have a second?
Second.
May we have
I don't know.
We have a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Good. Can we do an oath of office, or do we have one? Or did I hand it to you? Do you have yours?
Yes. I think he's got a shave first.
He's got a what?
Oh.
This is going to look like you and Paul.
What's wrong with that?
I will Brandt, do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States, that I will support the Constitution of the State of Iowa, and the Constitution and ordinances of the state. That I will faithfully and impartially discharge all the duties of the oath of office of council member Iowa, as now or hereafter required by law. He's going to give it to it. Now this is recorded, so you can speak now. Go ahead, say a few words.
Well, I appreciate it. Thank you, sir. I'm very humbled to be up here. I look forward to 4 years of serving the city of Marion, and I thank everyone for their support that supported me. Let's get ready. Let's go. Let's get it done. Thank you.
We now have a presentation. Do we have the NTS first or second, sir?
Kay will go first, and then when we get to the police section, we'll have the police department do theirs. Yep.
Fine. Ma'am? This is Kay Fisk, Neighborhood Transportation Services, NTS.
Good morning, Mayor and Council. Is this on?
I don't think so. There's a little button on the bottom.
There we go. Okay, again, good afternoon to the mayor and the council. I'm happy to be here this evening and talk to you. This is my favorite subject, so forgive me if I go on too long. You just give me one of these and I'll stop real fast. I just heard Mr. Brandt being sworn in, and I know he doesn't know a lot about NTS, so I'm going to give just a tiny bit of history that I might not have otherwise given. NTS started in 1994 with one 7-passenger van, and we provided 566 rides. This last year, we provided 47,900 rides, and we now have 4 vans and 5 buses. So over the years, we've grown considerably. And what we do is take people to work at night when the city buses aren't running. So anytime that you don't have a city bus on the street, NTS will be out there taking people to work and school. And when I say school, I'm talking about things like Mount Mercy, Kirkwood, those type of places. So we've been in business a long time. We're very well established, and we're very proud to serve our community. As I already mentioned, the number of rides that we were given this year, which is pretty significant because it's up from last year. There's 2 things to know about that. More people are back to work, and more jobs are out there for people to go to, so the economy is improving. And I'm sure you're all happy to hear that. I know we are. There's an exciting thing that's happened over the last year since I last talked to you. Neighborhood Transportation Service and Horizons, another very large nonprofit, have merged together. So we're one large organization, and we're one of the programs of Horizons now. It's very exciting because we used to be, there was 5 of us in the office and then about 17 drivers. Now there's over 100 people that I get to work with every day, so it's very exciting. One of the reasons that we decided on this move is we really were not in a position where we could grow much more, and yet we knew we needed to grow, we knew we could grow, and so by combining the skills and the services of the 2 agencies, we know they're going to do a lot better job. We've already, just since July, since the merger, we have increased our ridership by 457 people. And that's because we are utilizing kind of cross-pollination, if you will. The programs that are other programs of Horizons tell their clients about NTS and vice versa. We tell our clients about the mental health, the Meals on Wheels program, and also the consumer credit counseling. So it's a very, very good fit. You've got 4 different programs that are completely different to complement each other. Another reason, a couple of reasons that we merged was we didn't have an HR person in-house, so I kind of wore a lot of hats. I was HR, development director, everything that you could think of. So now we have a real honest-to-goodness HR person. And another thing, our accounting person was retiring, and we were either going to have to outsource our accounting or hire someone new. And with this day and age, when you're doing so much Medicaid transportation and needing the waivers, all the waiver stuff that has to be done, you really need accounting people who are really on the ball and know what they're doing. So they have a very robust financial department that we can depend upon. So that's a little bit about what's happened in the last year since I've last talked to you. We still struggle a bit on our nighttime 2 a.m. to 6 a.m. service. I've told you about that in the past. And we still continue to have trouble there because it is a very popular time of night, believe it or not. We have people going to hospitals to work, nursing homes, people cleaning buildings, maintenance type people, night watchmen. We have people going to kitchens to prep food for big kitchens like Rockwell, different large businesses like that. So there are people out there working when we're sleeping, and we're excited that we can take them to work and make their jobs available to them. The one thing that I think is kind of interesting, now let's see if I can, where is the little Viewmaster thing?
It's actually out, Kay. It's broken, so it's getting repaired.
Oh, darn. All right, well, I kind of struggled with that one, so I'm going to just hold this up so that you folks can take a look at that. This is just a piece of interesting information, and for the folks that can't see it, it's a chart that shows what times of night and how many, you can pass that around if you want, what times of night people are going to work. And it's really very interesting to see just exactly what are the peak times. And I think you'll find that interesting. It's nothing that's essential, but I do think it's interesting. In your package, you'll also have the list of businesses that we take people to. I think that is extremely important for you to see the number of businesses in Marion that are served. These are people that are coming in from Hiawatha and Cedar Rapids, and we're also taking people out of Marion and taking them to Cedar Rapids and Hiawatha. Some of the largest places that we serve as far as businesses are concerned for your people going out of Marion to other places like in Hiawatha, CCB that's out on Center Point Road. This is a very busy time of year because they're a box making company, and so they're getting ready for the holidays. That's very, very busy out there. Pearson and Nordstrom, very, very clear clear out by the airport. Nordstrom was trying to hire as many as 900 people this last season to fulfill their needs. So we ramp up during that time of year really, really heavy, and again during their anniversary sale in the middle of the year. We also take quite a number of of people from the Hinsman Nelson Center out to the different places that will hire felons. This is not necessarily something that helps Marion, but it's good for you to know that these are things that we do that are helping the community and helping individuals get way back into society again. These individuals come out of prison, they go to the Hinsman or Nelson Center, and they are expected to have a job, but they don't have a driver's license and they don't have a car, so they have no way to get to work. And so many places do not hire felons, and so it makes it very difficult for them to get there. So it's great to be able to give these individuals an opportunity to get back into society again and make a positive impact on their lives. I'm going to tell you a little bit about the legislative work that I've been doing over the last year. I've talked to you for a couple of years now about legislation that I've been working on for transportation and employment transportation rides, and we're getting closer every year. The first year that I was a lobbyist and lobbied for this bill, I was absolutely devastated when it didn't pass. I was just crushed. I just couldn't think how bad it could be. The second year, it was like, I was mad because I had worked very hard and I thought I had provided everything that I could possibly provide, and yet it didn't go through. But it got so close that, all of the old-timers tell me it takes 5 to 7 years to get a bill through. I'm not sure I'll live that long, but I'm going to try to continue to get this bill through, because what it will do is provide money for employment rides. And we're adding an additional element to it this year, and we're going to do education rides too. And when I say education, again, this is for adult education, for people who are trying to get additional training so they can make their lives better, apprenticeship programs and things like that. So we feel if we put another little crumb in there that somebody's going to look at and say, oh, that's really good, we really like that. Plus the governor has his program that he's very adamant about too, for additional education for employment. So I, again, want to do everything I can to beef that up. We had one victory last year. It's not necessarily going to help my organization, but it will help organizations that are able to serve your community. I worked with the Iowa Economic Development Authority, and they had additional money in their one of their funding buckets that hadn't been used. And so it's CDBG money, government grant money, and the rules have been rewritten, so we'll be able to have a grant process that will be able to be drawn down for any city under 50,000. Any city over 50,000 already receives CDBG money. So Cedar Rapids can't draw down from it, but anybody that's providing transportation in Hiawatha or Marion will be able to draw down on that. And the grant process mirrors the bill. It's almost exactly the same. We work together on it, and it's almost identical. There's a number of people throughout Iowa in the smaller communities like Spencer, Marshalltown, I think Decorah, that are in the process of trying to leverage some of that money. And NTS will do that too, because if we can use the money to take people from Marion to Cedar Rapids, but we can't bring people from Cedar Rapids into Marion because they are in a city of over 50,000. We have to have 51% of the ridership in any route that we'd take that would be under the 50,000 or from the smaller town. So we're hoping maybe we'll be able to tap into some of that as well. The needs are there. As I mentioned, our 2 a.m. to 6 a.m. service, we still have a waiting list. We have people come in constantly. They need that ride, and we have to say, sorry, we're going to have to wait till we have an opening. So that means that person's not going to work. That means that there's a business sitting there that's not providing the service or building a product. So it's just not a good thing. We need that service to be available to anybody that wants to leverage it. So finally we come to that dreaded sheet that talks about money. And as I've done in the past, I've kind of made sure that you knew how many rides came from Marion to other places and vice versa, how many are coming in from other places working here in your community. And we did increase from last year. The total rides for the whole year was 606,939 rides. So just to kind of familiarize you with how we figure out what it costs us, you would take that times the number that it costs us to provide the ride. And that figure is probably something that you look at and think, how can that be? It costs us $18.40 every time we provide a ride. How you figure that is you add all of your expenses together, your driver's salaries, the driver benefits, any overhead you have, of course gasoline, which is all over the place, you never know where it's going to be, and probably the most expensive thing is our insurance. We have to carry $5 million worth of insurance to haul passengers. So you add all that together and then you divide it by the number of rides you had that year, and that's how you come out with that figure. So $18.40, when you add this all up, you can see that we are at a disparity of about $92,000 that we're not able to cover. And that's where I come to you folks and to the other city governments in the community and ask for your support so we can continue to give these rides. Last year, you were very generous. Your $25,000 is well appreciated and being used in ever so many ways to help get your citizens to and from work. So this year, we'd like to ask for a 5% raise. That would be $26,250. We feel that's a fair amount to ask for when we know that we are actually increasing the number of rides, as I mentioned when I first started talking. So I'd like to have you entertain this idea of a 5% increase. I would also like to point out in your packet, there's a wonderful document in there. It's an economic impact study. We were fortunate enough to sit with some people at a transportation conference and talked about wanting to do this study, but economic impact studies are extremely expensive to have done, and they can run up to $30,000, which nonprofits just don't have that kind of money. But the wealth of information that is in this document is priceless. This professor that we sat with, she said, I'd kind of like to take that on as a special project to let me see how much it would cost for me to do that. Well, she ended up that she charged us $7,500 for it. So I wrote a grant, paid for the work to be done, and now we have this product that is, as I said, it's got a wealth of information. Probably the most significant thing in there that I, or at least what I find most significant, is that just our small company, little NTS, what our riders provide to pour back into the community is $7.7 million a year. $7.7 million a year. So if we stopped our services tomorrow and these people were not able to get to work, that money would not be going back into the economy. These individuals are paying state tax, they're paying local tax, they're paying school taxes. They are not soaking up social services. They're less apt to commit crimes. So it's a win-win for everybody, but that's probably the most significant piece that comes out of that. But I would like to have you look it over at your leisure, and if you have any additional questions, my card's in there, and you'll be able to get in touch with me. So I'll close by saying thank you again for your attention, and congratulations on your new appointment, Mr. Brandt. If you have any questions, I'll be glad to entertain those at this time.
No. Good. Thank you, ma'am.
Oh, you know what? I do have one more thing.
You
Can
do?
I have one more thing. Will you give me another minute?
Go ahead.
All right. This is, I'm going to read this without my glasses, which is scary. This is a letter that we received from one of our ex-customers. And it says, Dear NTS staff, employees, and volunteers, as you are aware, I am no longer needing NTS services. I want to express my sincere appreciation and thanks to everyone involved in my transportation needs during the past several months. I apologize for inconvenience of my scheduling changes caused while I was working as a temporary employee at Nordstrom. Your services have been such a valuable tool for me, as well as a wonderful comfort and peace of mind. Now that I am full-time employed and have secured my own transportation, I will always remember the important role that NTS played in my recent good fortunes. Sincerely, Ronnie Bailey. This is why you come to work every day, right here. This is why we do what we do. This is making a person self-sufficient, getting them on their feet, and making their life much better. So thank you again.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
I believe, Sergeant Miller want to go first.
Very well.
Sergeant Miller is in charge of, or not in charge, but he's second in charge of investigations. And on the request of Joe, we've added human trafficking to this presentation, which is going to make it a little longer. This is at least a 2-hour presentation just on human trafficking. I told Lance 20 minutes. We'll see how that goes.
I got it whittled down to maybe 10.
All right, well, that's because we got to do this ICAC, which has been really called Computer Forensics and Digital Evidence. And Carl Jerf is our full-time, or that's all he does at the police station is computer forensics. He will assist Sergeant Miller on this. I'd also like to say one more thing about the human trafficking before they get started is that the Marion Police Department was on the cutting edge of this 6 years ago. And we started this probably before anybody else in the state did. And so Sergeant Miller goes all over the state of Iowa and does this presentation on human trafficking and also helps other police departments because that's as well adverse at it that he is. And so without further ado, go ahead.
I wanted to say that this came about because on the mayor's forum of the League of the ladies, whatever they call it now, I forgot. What's that? League of Women Voters. That was a question that was asked us, and totally, I mean, it's like, wow, where do you go with that in a minute to answer? But anyway, that's where it came from. And then I had an email from a person that said that she had seen Mr. Miller, Sergeant Miller's presentation somewhere, and asked that we make that public. So I appreciate everyone's cooperation in making this happen. So thank you very much.
You get the very generic version, but I'll be happy to give you the full version some other time if you're interested. So, in the past, I've spoken to you about ICAC, Internet Crimes Against Children Task Force. We are no longer affiliated specifically with that task force, but we are still doing the exact same work. We're just able to support ourselves at this point. And so today's presentation is a more generic, widespread Internet crimes and electronic evidence. So the types of electronic evidence and types of crimes that we are currently, in the past year, calendar year, been involved with in examining electronic evidence are normal drug cases, robbery, computer hacking, burglary, murder, sexting, and school threats are just to name a few. That is by no means a complete list, but we do keep statistics on the types of cases that we work, and this is kind of a cutting from that list anyway. Break it down a little more specifically on child exploitation cases. We deal with cyberbullying or harassment. Those generally originate from the schools, and the schools have gotten very good at getting us involved in this stuff early, and we're able to kind of deal with it before it really gets out of control. An enticement case would be more of an internet-based case, like the To Catch a Predator type of things, where sexual predators are generally online. They're targeting kids. We're in there in an undercover capacity, and they mistakenly target us thinking that we're children, and oh, aren't they surprised when I show up instead of the 6-year-old. Possession and distribution of child sexual abuse images, and manufacturing of the child sexual abuse images. That is your standard child pornography types of cases. A lot of those originate from sexting, and a lot of those originate out of our schools, unfortunately, where children initially victimize themselves and then are oftentimes coerced into continuing that behavior. And then prostitution and human trafficking. And as the chief said, I'll be touching on that in a presentation here in just a few minutes. So we'll talk about that. Our computer forensics program has noticed some significant improvements in the past couple of years. We added Carl in April of 14 as a full-time examiner. It took us until this year to get him through the classes that he needed to become certified, and he can explain a little to you about that here in a second. But he has taken it to a whole level that we have not experienced before. It used to be Jerry Whitson, Sergeant Whitson, and myself pouring through the same cases that we were trying to work, and that's just not a good setup. And we are much more prepared at this point using Carl. And in doing so, we had to upgrade a number of pieces of equipment, and I'll touch on that here in a little bit. But capacity is really our problem, is staying ahead of the game in terms of being able to store the digital evidence that we come across. Here's a notable case from this past year. That's Kevin Jaron. He's a registered sex offender, used to live in the city of Marion. All those pages spread out there in our conference room, those are individual victims that Carl and I were sorting out. Carl went through the computer and he was pulling out this data for me. We were identifying these individual teenage girls, and then we had to make contact. We ended up with 264 victims that he victimized. He took a plea in the federal system for 40 years in prison. So, community outreach, we are continuing to do that in an effort to try to curb this problem, I'll call it. We will not arrest our way out of this. There's no way. The work comes in faster than we can deal with it. As technology changes, so too does the criminal activity, and you've got to stay up on that. But myself and Detective Wilson, Andrea Wilson, are presenting to the sixth grade levels classes within our community. I'm oftentimes requested to present outside of the city of Cedar Rapids, and we do that. I present at Foundation 2, some of the shelters, and we've just been asked to start presenting in Mount Vernon as well, as they don't have anybody that's versed in this to do those presentations. So this calendar year, we've got 38 cases this year, forensic cases, okay? That is actual cases that come in that we discover some sort of evidence on, and then I have to send it to Carl for a more in-depth examination. Now, 38 cases doesn't really sound like a lot in the scheme of things, but 38 cases is a tremendous amount of data. And like I said earlier, we cannot keep up with our storage demands for the data that we have to go through, because the court system doesn't allow you to save just a portion of the data. You save everything or you save nothing, but you have to save it all. So we are up to this year, and we are not through a full calendar year, but we're up to 5.79 terabytes of data that Carl has poured through. And he'll give you kind of a rundown of what that actually equates to, and I'll let him talk briefly about some of the new equipment that we've purchased to try to handle this.
All right, so 5.79 terabytes, it might sound kind of like a foreign language to you, so I broke it down like this. Basically, that equates to 1,860,000 photographs, if I were looking at one a second for 40-hour work weeks, it would take me 3 months to look at every photo. It breaks down to 515 million pages of written word, which would take me over 70 years to read working a full work schedule, or 102,000 hours of music, which would take me 50 years to listen to. So it's a lot of data that we're getting coming through our office that, obviously I don't have to read every page. I don't have to listen to every audio file, but it's a lot of work. And thankfully, we've got a new server at the PD. Well, new to us. So
Repurposed from the old PD. It was the server that used to run our entire building. We now have it dedicated just to run our computer forensics and back up our data, and we've already outgrown that.
Yeah, and we've got 2 new computers this year, because it's not just storage, but then to go through that amount of data requires better processing, better computers. So we've got 2 new computers that help with that. So, like you said, it's going to continue to be a challenge, but so far, whatever we've asked for, we've gotten. So hopefully, if that keeps up, we should be able to stay ahead of the curve.
I always say that Carl's going to have the strongest index finger of anybody because he sits there with the little wheel on his mouse and does this all day as he's scrolling through the pictures. And he can look at them fast because they're just going sheets and sheets of them just down. And you'll see him, he'll just wheel right through it, and then all of a sudden he'll stop, and he'll back up a little bit, and he'll go that one. And his eye gets trained for it. And, it's a sad story, but at the same time, he's very efficient at it. It's sad that we have to sit there and scroll through all those photos to look for sexual photos of children, but that's what it's come down to at this point. So, any questions on the ICAC or the computer forensic information that we've presented?
Those 5.7 terabytes, is that just for items in our area?
Yeah, that's just Marion, and that's a combination of phones and computers, because phones now hold tremendous amounts of data as well. My phone will hold 32 gigs of data alone. So when we seize a phone, which is electronic communication, like on a murder case or a drug case, something like that, he's got to pour through all that stuff. It takes specialized equipment, specialized software.
I think it's not all contraband necessarily, but like Sergeant Miller said, if I seize somebody's computer, I have to make a copy of it, and I have to maintain that whole copy of it, even if there's only 10 contraband files on it, just in case the court wants to look at the entire computer later on. So that's why it's one of the reasons why it's so big, is I can't just hold on to the bad files. I have to hold on to the suspect's whole computer, basically a copy of it.
Your Honor, I just want to say another thing. I think the council has to understand one thing, is that when we make an arrest on anybody, since probably 50% of all the crimes got to do with drugs, we have to seize their computer and their phones and go through everything. And so all the rest, we're doing that every time. Well, I wouldn't say every time, but 90% of the time we're doing that. And that's why you see the terabytes and numbers we have. But everybody keeps all their information either on their phone or their computer. They don't keep it up here anymore. They've got it somewhere else. And we have to do that on almost every arrest we make.
Well, and as an example, with the homicide at Hy-Vee, we have Hy-Vee's server sitting in our evidence now.
Oh, my God.
Because it's digital video. So we have to maintain that. We had to seize that from Hy-Vee. They literally sent somebody from Des Moines that day to physically take the hardware out of their server and provide that to us. So if you can imagine the amount of data that sits on Hy-Vee's server, now they're also backed up other places, but we have to have the originals. And essentially on a homicide case, we have to maintain that forever, because you'll have to go through the appeal process. So we sit there with that data. That's why storage becomes an issue.
That case that you were showing with all the sheets spread out.
Mr. Jarin, yeah.
How long did you work on that case?
Probably at least 8 months.
6 to 8?
9 months, yeah.
You see how many victims he has, that he had 200, what was it, Lance?
264 victims.
264 victims, and then each victim, there's multiple papers you have to go through.
Yeah.
And I thought it was longer than 8 months, but that's just one person, that's one arrest. And that means nothing else is really getting done, depending on, we have to prioritize.
You gotta go talk to each of those victims too, and it's not like all 264 are sitting here in Marion because it's the internet, you know? I mean, he was victimizing people that he could drive to, but I had victims in Cedar Rapids, Iowa City, Quad Cities, Waterloo, Mason City. I mean, and we had to run around and go talk to those people, and you can imagine a lot of those victims are kids. They're reluctant to tell you the truth when you show up, so you have to go with the proof, so to speak, to get them to talk to you. So that means Carl's got to go in there, mine the data out, find the photos, find the chats, find the conversation, print that stuff out so that we can go and then get a truthful statement from him.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
No wonder he looks so pale.
Yeah, that's all. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right,
Thank
so
you.
now moving on to the prostitution or human trafficking. Okay, this is my very abbreviated PowerPoint, but I like to start out with this slide. So you tell me, when did slavery end in the United States? The answer:
1963.
it hasn't.
Oh.
Let's talk about human trafficking for a minute. There's essentially two types of human trafficking. We have sex trafficking and we have labor trafficking. I guess my area of expertise, if you want to call it that, would be in the sex trafficking industry. That's what I concentrate on. Now, we certainly have labor trafficking in Iowa, predominantly in a lot of rural areas, although it can happen in town. But it's around here, it's heavily associated with agriculture. So under Iowa Code 710A, this is the definition as it starts out for human trafficking. And it's a participation in a venture to recruit, harbor, transport, supply provisions for, or obtain a person for any of the following purposes. And it's broken down into two categories, either forced labor or service, or it's broken down into commercial sexual activity. And under commercial sexual activity, it's actually broken down again, and it's defined as 18 and older, or it's defined as under 18, that being somebody that's a juvenile. If there's under 18, just the act, just a sexual act itself presumes that it is, in fact, human trafficking. So there are three portions to human trafficking, three criteria that you have to meet. You have to meet one of those criteria. You have to either show force, fraud, or coercion, unless, as I just said, they're under the age of 18, and then it's assumed, automatic, that those criteria are met. But if it's over 18 or if it's forced labor, you have to show one of these elements to the crime, either force, fraud, or coercion. Examples of force that we have seen in the cases that we have made are beatings and torture, rape or sexual abuse, sexual harassment, forced pregnancy and abortion, and use of restraints. Those are examples of force. Now, the reality is I've seen many more examples of force, but those are some fairly common ones. Examples of fraud. We have promises of immigration and travel documents, victims instructed to use counterfeit documents, promises of salaries that never materialize, and misrepresentations of work. And then when we get into coercion, these would be all examples of coercion that might occur. Removal of children for women. They will take the children and they'll say, if you don't go perform this sexual act, you'll never see your child again. Definitely coercive that way. One thing to keep in mind is human trafficking is not smuggling. This slide lays it out pretty well, the differences between the two, but the bottom is really what you need to focus on there. Alien smuggling is a crime against the border. That is where the crime lies. Okay? Human trafficking, it's a crime against a person. You can be a trafficked victim and never have crossed a border. You can be a trafficked victim and still live in your house. So we conduct stings, and we do it on a fairly regular basis. The goal of our stings is twofold. It's to find victims, and it's to address the supply and demand for commercial sex within the community. Stings are meant to cast a wide net. We intentionally run stings both directions. We will put advertise girls, and we'll call in the Johns and arrest the Johns. Johns being somebody that's paying for sex. But we will also pose as a John, and we'll go online and look up the escorts and the prostitutes and call them in as victims, and we'll do that. Now, I will say this, that when you make those arrests, those initial arrests are prostitution charge. That is not the same as human trafficking. In order to make that human trafficking charge, you've got to prove that force, that fraud, that coercion, or you have to show that they were under the age of 18. In the event of a sexual act. It takes a lot of work to do that, a lot of work. We've had some good cases. I have an individual by the name of Jackson, last name was Jackson. He's receiving a life sentence in the federal penitentiary. He brought 2 juveniles over from Milwaukee over to our area, and he ended up delivering these 2 girls to us during a sting operation. He's now serving a life sentence for human trafficking. So what are the objectives to it? I touched on this a little bit, but we identify the demand, we identify the perpetrators, and we identify the victims. And then we also look for other types of sex crimes that are showing up in our community. So why target the Johns? Why target the guys that are out there buying the sex? As it's noted in the last bullet there, a comprehensive study in New Jersey showed that if you have a limited budget and you want to make the biggest impact on human trafficking in your community, your money is best spent targeting the Johns, because if you can reduce the demand, the supply will not come to your community. Okay? That is usually a traveling road show. Although you always have some local people, it's usually girls traveling in, because they take the girls out of their normal home, their normal element, and they bring them to an unknown community. So most of the people that are being victimized in our area are not from our area. Okay? They remove them. That's part of the force. That's part of the fraud. That's part of the coercion. Get them away from what they know so that you can control them. So if you really want to control the human trafficking in your area, you go after the guys. Now, the flip side of that is they're the ones that bring the money to the operation. So when we arrest, we take their money, and that funds the next operation after we forfeit it. Today's John is also tomorrow's informant. You'll remember in years past we had an Asian massage parlor and Massage Heaven were the 2 names of the businesses here in Marion. Okay, we caught an individual in a sting operation, a John. We ended up sending him into these 2 businesses, and that's how we made our cases against these 2 businesses, both of which are no longer operating in our city. We also do Craigslist operations on a fairly regular basis. When you're fishing in that pond, you never know what you're going to catch. All right. This was a human trafficking sting operation where we had the John show up. As a part of that investigation, we analyzed the cell phone, doing the stuff that we just talked about. Boom, child pornography all over the inside of this cell phone, because it's the same type of person. He's frequenting prostitutes. He's looking for young girls to solicit sex from on the internet. He's also got a phone full of child pornography. He ended up getting caught up in that. He's got 14 years federal time. This is just the close-up of the article. I'll skip through that. I'll end with this. This was a letter that I received from his mother as a result of his arrest. So I'll let you read that. So, she was talking about thank you notes that she gets. So these are the thank you notes that I get. But I consider it just that. It is a thank you note. It means we're doing what we're supposed to be doing. So that kind of gives you an oversight of what we're dealing with, the mentality of what we're dealing with, and those that will make excuses for others' bad behavior. And with that, I will end my presentation. Any questions?
You do any coordination with sheriff or Cedar Rapids Police or anything?
We do. It's been a while since we've done a massive sting, but we have done those where we have done them both with Cedar Rapids and Lynn County. When we've done that, we've done multiple day operations, moved hotels, things like that. The last one resulted in well over 30 arrests and seizure of about $30,000 in a couple of cars. And we made several child pornography cases as well as human trafficking cases. So we do that, but that is a major, major undertaking. It involved no less than 70 officers the last time we did it. And so you can imagine how that taxes the three agencies when you do that. But we'll bring in Hiawatha and things like that. More commonly these days, I've been operating with just my personnel out of the police department. I tend to advertise on Craigslist. I'll frequently trade drugs for sex, or that's what I'll advertise. And then I get kind of a trifecta because they bring me drugs, they get arrested for prostitution, and we generally meet in a park, so it's an enhanced penalty for the delivery. And so that seems to work out pretty well for us. But I can do that with a small team of about 5. We'll do it in a park or Menards parking lot or Walmart or wherever and set it up that way.
So if a citizen sees something, do they start with a phone call to you guys?
Absolutely. And we're open 24/7.
Yeah, that was, I mean, that's, to me, that'd be the best thing to do is to have someone, a person see something going on and then,
Well, it's absolutely happened. I mean, we've acted on tips like that and find them to be credible tips or whatever and taken action, been able to take action based on citizen complaints. So.
Okay. What happened to the girls that were involved in the massage parlor in town?
2 of them were here illegally, but they were from China, so they were not deported because they have status here, meaning that they can't be necessarily shipped back to a communist country. The third one was a South Korean gal, and she was actually sent back. She was here on fictitious papers. The Korean gal had been here for about 30 hours when she got caught up in our deal. But there were, at the time, many, many more girls. They were, if you remember the business on 10th Street there was across from, we're kind of behind the Maid right there. And they had an apartment above the Maid right. They had 9 people living in that apartment above the Maid right up there. So, yeah, they were piling them in there and rotating those girls through.
Thank you.
Yep.
well, I want to thank Chief for getting this put together for us
No problem.
and thank you, Sergeant Miller, for coming out tonight.
He spent more time condensing it down than he did anything else. He could probably do that by heart as it is.
And in lieu of the hate letter you got, we appreciate what you're doing. Those are
Okay,
becoming
now,
pretty
you,
common.
you get control of a John,
Right.
who then proceeds to go ahead and get this all set up and all. Does he get a reduced sentence?
It depends. I'd love to say that the court takes it as seriously as I do, but they don't. In my opinion, they generally let them off fairly easy.
Because of the cooperation?
Well, if they're cooperating with us, they do. Depending on what they do, they get a pretty good deal. But even those that don't cooperate, and there are those that just kind of thumb their nose at us, the judges tend to go pretty light on them. But we do our part. That's all I can say.
I miss it.
Anything else?
Thank you.
You sure? Is it the other one? Is it? Well, that's fine. I don't need it. I can get by without it. Try. Oh, anyways, if I can't get the stuff up, it's no big deal. Thank you. Under public service, I'll start with item number 3. This is a motion to receive and file correspondence from the Linn County Cedar Rapids Solid Waste Agency. You got a copy of the memo in your council packet. And essentially, what the staff of the Solid Waste Agency is proposing to do is institute a recycling fee assessment for the next fiscal year. And it is a very large assessment. It's going to be about $62,000 annually for the city of Marion. And as you recall, last year, we did have to increase solid waste fees associated with solid waste collections. I believe we increased those from $13.25 last year to $14. That was to compensate for the community credit program that they did away with at the Solid Waste Agency. Under that program, each city was allocated a certain amount of funds to do amnesty and citywide cleanup. That has since gone away, and then now, under the recycling fee assessment program, we'll be paying an assessment fee of close to $63,000 a year. That will equate to about a 50 to 75 cent increase in addition to the increase we saw last year in the solid waste fees. The staff at the agency has indicated that the recycling markets are down right now. Therefore, commodities are not as valuable as they are as they were before. And so now we will have to kind of brunt the recycling commodity markets for now. So is there any questions on that specifically associated with recyclables?
That went out to all municipalities, or did that go out to?
Yeah,
Marion?
and I apologize for this. I had this on the on there, and I can get a copy to the council. But it is going to all the municipalities within Linn County. And just for reference, I believe the city of Cedar Rapids, they're responsible for about $226,000 next year for a recycling fee assessment. Hiawatha, just over $12,000, and rural Linn County, they'll be allocated about $37,000. So right now, the cost to recycle is actually twice as much as it is to landfill.
Is there anything that goes out in recycling that couldn't be handled by plasma arc technology?
Is there anything that goes out in recycling?
Mm-hmm. So we're not paying for a brand new building, is what I'm thinking of.
Yeah, so it probably, sure. But for now, this is what we're looking at for next fiscal year. So I wanted to brief the council before we got into the budget scenarios that's up and coming, because we will have to increase fees to offset this expenditure. So,
What will be the increase?
right now, we're efforting 50 to 75 cents per month. So now we're at $14. We'll probably go to $14.50, $14.75 to hedge that.
Okay, so once again, we are increasing the cost of a service.
Mm-hmm.
And even though I've gotten a letter from the gas company saying that they are increasing their costs, and I understand Alliant is coming out with one increasing their cost, and yet Social Security has not increased their cost of living, when do we stop going into the hole, personally?
In terms of what I'm speaking of, or to right now, that's nothing we can control. We have only one recycling vendor in this area. It was City Cart, now it's Republic Services. They have bought them out, and they're now redoing the infrastructure at that facility. So I'm sure we're paying some of those expenses as well.
Okay, well, basically, what the people need to hear is what you're telling,
Mm-hmm.
so that it's not, well, what the heck, let's just raise it, you know.
Oh, yeah, they will, definitely, when we go to increase that. So, yeah, all the fees associated with solid waste, this will be a pass-through, a total pass-through, something we can't control for the time being, but it is something we do have to manage here in the next year.
For the time being, until we get into the recycling ourselves, sir?
Correct.
Thank you.
Correct.
So did you said all the municipalities got hit with, I mean,
Yep.
you're showing 88% increase for us. Is that the same for the others, or?
Yeah, well, what they're proposing to do is a fee assessment based upon population. And so per population, you'll see, well, they're asking for an additional 34.50 ton subsidy for that recycling fee. And so, at least that's what they're proposing. Now, the board has yet to act on that, but I wanted to get this to the council as soon as possible. So when we come and discuss this at budget time, we know what we're talking about.
Wow, that's a
Yes,
lot.
it is a lot for recycling. Yes, it is.
Go ahead.
Okay. Moving on, item number 4. This is something we didn't see coming, but we're in a position to where the boiler systems at public service have failed. Last year, we spent between $5,000 and $6,000 through the winter season just to keep them going. And looking and during preventive maintenance this year, we noticed that one would not fire. The other one's not far away from failing as well. So we solicited 3 bids. Out of those 3 bids, the information we got back, we are recommending awarding that bid to Foster's Heating. These will be replacing the boilers as well as all the plumbing, control valves, gate valves, everything like that. Regardless, we will utilize that facility, so replacing the boilers makes sense, especially this time of year before it gets cold. We do, majority of our fleet is diesel, so we have to keep those vehicles warm during the winter time. So,
Be more efficient.
a lot more efficient, a lot less space. Should see some cost savings actually with the new boilers.
Will it run on compressed natural gas?
They'll run on natural gas. Yes, that's correct. Okay. All right. Thank you. Appreciate it.
You ready for me, Aaron? As you can see on there, hopefully you have a memo on this, on body cameras. This is per our asset replacement plan. We've had body cameras for 3 years, so we really had them before the big push through the nation. And so what we're doing, we're just replacing them to keep them, upgraded to, this one here like has 3.5 hours actual recording time, 7 days of battery, has an on-off switch on it, a bigger screen, can take still photos, more data. This can go up to 32 gig if we need to hold it. So, and they're not too bad, $295 a piece. We're wanting to get 50 of them, have a few extras in case someone gets broke when they're out in the field. So about $15,000, which is about $1,800 under budget. Any questions on that? I didn't figure the council had very many questions on body cameras for the police department, but I got answers if you need them.
With the old ones, we will use the old ones. We'll keep them around.
Yeah, I'm going to keep them. I already gave one to, I think it was Neil that got one to help him in his duties. I let him look at our policy. I would think they'd want to get their own policy, though, on the use of these body cameras, but he can at least have something to go off of. So, yeah, we're going to hold on to the old ones, but those were like $100 cameras, so these cameras are at least 3 times better than what we used to have.
Do you have any indication as to percentage of lawsuits that have been eliminated by use of these?
No. Actually, to be quite honest with you, at this point, and you got to remember we started earlier than anybody else in Iowa, the cameras in the cars have saved us more suits than the body cameras have. But now with the society changing and with things going on now, that might turn around. It might be the body cameras to start saving us. But people have to understand that this is just a tool. This is not going to fix all the problems, because the body camera shows this way, doesn't show what's going on over here, and doesn't show what happened before or maybe after. So just remember that when these situations, God forbid, ever come up.
But extras, are you buying extra cameras for, like, you're looking at hiring additional people and Or are you covering that with this purchase?
Yes, we're still going to have probably 5 to 6 extra ones, just in case, like I say, they get, if we get in a tussle or they get broke in the field, that we'll be able to replace that officer right away so he doesn't have to go the day without a camera.
So are the other ones black and white and these are color?
They're pretty nice for $300. I was quite impressed with it. We've been doing, we've got 2 on the street right now before we decided to go to these to make sure this is what we wanted, and this is a lot better pixel and everything. It's a lot better camera.
I was just kidding.
I know you are.
Joe, you don't get one.
I don't get one, no.
Well, thank you. Parks?
Yes, I just had number 1 under Park start tonight. On Thursday, we'll have the public hearing regarding the utility overhang easement that we're providing to Interstate Power and Light, Lion Energy. Included a site map of the area in the council packet. The power lines will be located west of Creek Bend Court down in the Grand Avenue area. The lines will be placed on poles that are provided by ITC. And at the last council meeting, Joe had asked what the height was that those lines would be on the poles. So I did get a response back from Marion on that. And they're saying that they'll be from ground height up about 40 foot in the air. We do have our trail that runs underneath those power lines down in that area, but that they will have no impact to the trail or any activities that we do in that area.
Thanks for checking on that, Mike.
No problem.
Do we anticipate any controversy on this at all? I don't think we
Not that I.
being at all. Okay.
No.
It might be if we were putting in new poles or something like that, where there hadn't been any before, but because they're going on existing infrastructure, I wouldn't anticipate anything.
Good. Engineering? Go ahead.
Thank you, Your Honor. Items 2 and 3 are the access fees for the 29th Avenue Whiting project. I had previously presented this to council. We will be looking at fees for Prestwick LLC and Robson Homes, which are the 2 developments on the north side of 29th Avenue, which will have a frontage hookup fee at the time of final plating. Any questions on that? Items 4 and 5 are also a public hearing and an ordinance for the establishment and adoption of the statewide urban design specifications program. Mike did a presentation on this at the last meeting. Thought that was pretty thorough. Will, if you have any questions, we can always get with you to help you out. We have had very little response on this. It's pretty well accepted across the state. We did have an open house on October 28th and only had a couple people show up. So we expect it to move forward. We'll have some follow-up resolutions on special provisions and so forth as we modify them to make them more similar to what we have now. But basically, we'll make a full switch over to the design and enforcement of these specifications. Number 11 has to do with the roundabout project at 7th and 7th. As part of that project, we typically hire a services to provide for us plant inspection. In other words, it'll be a person to, you have a new memo in front of you that explains that. That will take care of our concrete sampling and so forth at the plant. This is pretty time intensive. It would be very difficult for our staff to do this and cover our other duties. So we are proposing to award this contract to Team Services for $9,516.16. We did solicit and receive 3 proposals. This is the lowest one at an hourly rate of about $40. We will pay for this on an hourly rate, depending on how often they're there, but we anticipate to be around that $10,000 range. Questions on that? The last item was a request we did receive and TAC reviewed regarding First Street from 29th Avenue to 33rd Avenue. We received one letter, actually an email, from a lady that was highly supportive of the no parking. I've not received anything else. We have notified all the adjacent impacted owners. and we are recommending that we post no parking on the west side. There's one mailbox on the east side, but all the mailboxes other than that are on the west side, so we think that would be the good location for it. That's all I have.
Thank you. Planning?
Yes, I've asked Kesha to give a presentation. She's going to have to maybe pass around some maps in the event that... I'm sure you're all very familiar with these areas.
I apologize. I thought the Elmo was going to be up. I'd be able to point you in the right direction. What I have is I've given the council an aerial of the area between 35th Street and Highway 13. It's basically the area from Hy-Vee to Walmart. And then there's yellow dots on there. Those yellow dots represent bus stops along 10th Avenue in that location. So what I want to talk about is a Service Transportation Program grant. The CMPO, the Corridor Metropolitan Planning Organization, represents Cedar Rapids, Marion, Hiawatha, Robbins, Ely, and now Palo for federal highway funds. And the CMPO receives about approximately $5 million every year to install, construct, and design transportation projects within the metro area. A number of years ago, the CMPO voted to put 80% of that $5 million every year towards trails, and this is the last year of that 80%. So roughly about $4 million will be going towards trails, allocating this year to be received by one of the entities in 2020. And so we don't see the immediate result, but it is something that we are able to plan for, get our kind of ducks in a row for that. And so looking at all of the projects within Marion would make its own request, just as Cedar Rapids makes its own request. The Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Committee looked at a number of the trails recommended in the Master Trails Plan. The Master Trails Plan was adopted in 2014. And so they looked at a number of different trail options. You know, do we want another 10-foot recreation trail? Do we need side paths? Where do we need them? And the Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Committee recommended installing side paths, so they're large sidewalks. Federal requirement is 10-foot wide, and we're recommending them on both sides of 10th Avenue between Hy-Vee and Walmart. As you'll notice from the aerial, the white on the little white lines are the property lines, and there is a decent amount of right-of-way in there. We understand that there's some water. Obviously, the engineering will be put into that. It was a recommendation of BPAC to submit the grant application to the CMPO. Those are due in January. And so what I'm kind of asking of you is we'd like a motion to direct staff to solicit engineering estimates for this project, and then we'd be able to return, I would be able to return in December with a cost estimate for what those side paths would cost. We then submit the application to the CMPO, and then if funded, the city would only pay 20% of the total project cost. And so it's a pretty good deal for a trail. And part of the reasoning is I put the bus stops on the aerial just because there is a need. If you know, the Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Committee felt that this was more of a need than a want. Sometimes recreation trails, we want them more for their scenic, you know, connecting point A to point B. This was more of a allowing transportation, allowing people on the bus stops to use those as a stop instead of just standing by a sign on the side of the road. So, any questions of staff?
Yes. This, from Hy-Vee to Walmart, now this is public sidewalk,
Correct.
10 feet wide.
Yep, it's a federal requirement.
Okay, who cleans it in the winter?
The Parks Department currently maintains all of the trails, all of the roadside trails and off-street trails within Marion.
Overtime pay, right?
There's a little bit of overtime involved with all of our snow removal, but as far as the trails, we have priorities that we do first, and typically our overtime is for clearing the facility parking lots. The trails are typically done during regular working hours.
Okay. Because 10 feet wide seems, I mean, you could drive a car down that.
It's a federal standard. We could ask for an exception, 8 feet wide, but typically, if we've got the right of way and we don't have an overwhelmingly good excuse of why we need 8. Sometimes there's steep slopes, sometimes it's impossible to get an easement from somebody. But in the instance where we potentially have enough right of way, it's gentle slopes, you're not going through a large amount of wetland. I'm not so sure that we'd be successful in getting a variance from that.
I just would like to see the guy who decided 10 feet was the standard that should be used. I mean, because it just seems an arbitrary number.
It's ideally the safe passing. So if you are on a bicycle traveling one way and a bicycle coming the other way, ideally you'd want minimum, that 4 to 5 feet to go each way. It reduces the conflict point. It's the same reason that Dan has travel lane widths for cars, giving each their own designated area.
Any indication, and I agree with, there's a lot of foot traffic there. Is there any indication in your app, or have we talked about it all, reducing that speed limit? The speed limit's 45 and they're going 55. That used to be open country. It isn't anymore. And I speak and I admit that I have an interest in a business that's on that street, but it would seem to me like for safety that we might give some consideration to lowering that speed limit.
I would defer anything like that to engineering.
We would only do that after a comprehensive traffic study. I'm not sure that, and we can do that, I mean, that's not a problem. I'm not sure that we could look at the accident rates and so forth and get kind of a superficial overview of whether the study would be necessary or not. Probably wouldn't hurt to look at it. We could do a kind of a superficial look at it and decide, get something back to you on that.
There's just a lot of foot traffic out there anymore, and a lot of traffic,
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think the accident rate's that high out there, but we sure can look at it. Visibility's good. There's just a lot of
visibility's fine.
Yeah. And I think that this project is consistent with the bike and pedestrian plan. The 10-foot is a standard that's used nationally. So any federal dollar would be a 10-foot standard. Even locally, we've had the issue of whether we go 8-foot or 10-foot. Tower Terrace, I think we're at 8-foot. So when we do projects locally, we do look at the 8-foot as an option. But that's at a federal level, when you're dealing with those dollars, you got to kind of roll with what they're telling you got to do. The other thing I would point out in this project, we've been extremely successful. Kesha has been very pivotal in the success that we've had with the trail funding. What's the dollar number we're up at the regional level from trail funding? I mean, rough estimate.
I'd estimate in fiscal year 2016 and 2018 alone, there were 3 separate grants, about $10 million.
So if you'll recall, when we did our bike and ped plan, it came back and there was a lot of conversation in the public about us having a bike and ped plan that was going to, at build out would be $93 million. It is amazing that in the first couple of years, we've been able to secure, 10% of that plan. And these are 20-year plans. So I think this is a process that we've been very successful at. It's consistent with our plans, and it's a great opportunity to get 80% of the dollars paid for this program. I'd also point out that numerous requests have come in for bus traffic out here to get employees. As an alternative to the bus, there's always bicycle, and if these things are cleared, that provides at least safe passage for folks to get to the areas of town that we currently are having a problem with bus service. And if they can get to the Walmart area, we have the trail underneath Highway 13, and that safe passage is critical. So I think it's a great opportunity for us to at least submit a strong application to receive the funds. So.
And as I said, I'd come back in December with a total cost so the council knows what we would be committing to when submitting an application. This is just to get the engineering estimate for what it would take, what it would cost us, what it would cost grant-wise to get this done.
A couple of those drives are private drives off of there. Will we have to just acquire a right-of-way, or will we have to purchase that, or?
And that, I'm not quite sure if that is somehow getting access rights over those, or easement rights over those driveways.
Because of the new ADA requirements that apply also to trails, we would have to have a minimum cross slope of 2%. So whether we cross a street or whether we cross a driveway, we're going to have to modify those to meet those standards. That may require some construction easements back onto private property to readjust those drives. But as long as we provide access in the end, we would not be buying access rights.
But we would be on tap to make those modifications, though.
That would be part of the project that she's talking about here, is to put in the trails, but also modify the environment that those trails go into.
Okay. Thank you.
Before we go on, I have a question about number 9, under planning and development.
Yes.
I think that, to me, it looks like the appointment of Tim Mooney is a conflict of interest.
He's been on there for almost 20 years.
I know he has. And you consider all the land that he's developed and things like this, and I question the propriety of it. Mm-hmm. I mean, since Marion has grown considerably in 20 years, right?
Yep.
And it just doesn't look healthy.
Well, I could see where that would be a concern. I would welcome you to come to the meetings or review the minutes from the meetings in which he has stepped down off the dais to provide either when he has a conflict or to address the commission when he has a project separate from his position. I'd further say that regardless of whether Tim Mooney was on there, we would want a developer on that commission. The value that they bring is evaluating their peers and evaluating the plans and development projects that come through from a private development perspective. I think everyone would agree that if it was purely a bunch of public guys up here reviewing private projects, we probably would have some conflict. So it's good to have all sides being represented on that. And we do have a variety of folks. So while it may seem to be that a lot of developers come to the Planning Commission for a review and approval or recommendation to the council, they do, there's value in having them reviewing their own type of projects.
Well, the only thing I question is with especially the proposed Y location and the land that's owned by him and Mr. Engel. And it just doesn't look right.
Well, I think you'd have to look a little bit further at the role of the Planning Commission. They have nothing to do with acquisitions of property here.
But it's still in all, you've got one person's name attached to these various projects, and people question this, and they expect me to come up with an answer, and I can't.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Does he actually vote on issues related to his projects?
No, he abstains. Completely abstains. He's been pivotal in I would say, providing a higher standard of design from the process.
I mean, it's been a long time since I was on the Planning and Zoning Commission, but my recollection from being on that commission, same time that he was on, he really raised the bar and pushed developers to do better things and to give the community a better product. I mean, that's just what I remember.
Yep, I would say that he's been very instrumental in bringing forward projects and or policies that have been positive to the city.
Go ahead.
If you'll indulge me for a second, Mayor, I think some of our representatives from Luxera, before we start talking about the advisory board, have an introduction to make for somebody that would be hopefully a familiar face for the city council in the coming years.
Jeff Witter, President, Luxera Aviation, 2079 Springville. I'm very much in support. Luxera is for an advisory board for the city to have one, and the only concern we have is that they would have a clear direction by the council of what their role would be to move the airport forward. I'd like to introduce Cole Thornton as our airport manager acting at Marion. He's been there a long time, but he can say a few words, and just wanted to offer our support and introduce Cole. Thanks.
Thank you. Again, my name's Cole Norton, and I began managing the Marion Airport for Luxera Aviation and the beginning of August. It's taken a little bit time to get things up to speed, but I just wanted to come here now to introduce myself. I'm definitely excited to be part of this and be a part of the city in a way. I'm a commercial pilot and flight instructor. I learned to fly at the Marion Airport. Started back in 2009, and since then I began working part-time at the airport and helping the old owner, and so that's
Former owner.
The former owner. Sure. However you want to say it. The past owner. And so that's where I got most of my experience as far as the actual day-to-day operations of the airport. We've had over 10,000 operations per year. That's 10,000 landings consistently for probably, I think, the past 10 years. Before that, maybe it was a little bit less. There's 50 aircraft based there, and there's 3,600 aircraft registered in Iowa, and they have to land somewhere. So I look forward to improving the airport and drawing more attention and getting more people there. It is an extreme economic developer, and when I go to other airports and talk to pilots, like I do very often, they just cannot believe the whole situation. So I'm learning as the city is learning, and it's a very unique situation, but I think it's going to work out really well. Do you have any questions for me?
You said there are currently 50 aircraft?
Yeah, approximately 50. Yep.
Okay.
Just as long as you have a whole lot of liability insurance on, we'll support him.
Yes, we do.
That's good. Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you.
Sir.
Yeah, what I wanted to discuss with the council is we've had general discussions about forming an advisory board for the airport to kind of help develop their own rules of procedure and determine what the role would be for a future airport commission, but we haven't really talked about how that committee should be comprised, how many members it should have, anything like that. And I have some ideas, but I didn't want to go too far down that path without really discussing with the council and getting some feedback on it. I think my thought is anyway for the advisory board that we would look at probably 5 people for that, and then their task would be over the coming months to work with the fixed base operator and come up with the rules and bylaws for the actual airport commission that would ultimately be created. They could potentially roll over and become members of the airport commission, but I think it would be a good opportunity for someone to kind of dip their proverbial toe in the water and see if this is something that they would be interested in on kind of a short-term commitment on an ad hoc committee. The question I really had for council is when it comes to appointing a new board or a commission like this, we have some choices to make as far as things like residency requirements, length of terms for the commission in the future. It's not unusual for an airport that serves an area larger than the municipal boundaries to have 1 or 2 representatives that may not be required to be city residents, but they are required to have some kind of a link to the airport. So, you know, they might have a plane station there, or they might own a hangar there or something like that. So before before we got too far down the list, I wanted to get any council feedback and see, if you had any particular thoughts about how that should lean. I think they should have some kind of an aviation background. It'd be nice to have somebody maybe with some the finance or infrastructure background, civil engineer or something like that could sit on that advisory board, but wanted to see if any of the council members had particular ideas.
Personally, I don't think the residency, Lynn County, somebody that can get to meetings, but I think the expertise is the important part. I know you do have one civil engineer who's also a pilot who is a person on your list, and to me, that's more important than residency.
I guess I was thinking 5 also, but I guess I was thinking maybe a couple of the people would be Marion residents and then have like a at-large type where it would encompass Lynn County or something like that, or 2, maybe 2 and 2, and then something.
I think you would want 3 Marion and then 2 outside.
Yeah, something like that.
But Marion should have the large number.
Right, but have a sort of an at-large type group as well to cover that.
Is this the advisory group you're talking with 5?
Yeah, this would be the initial group. Part of what they would do for their research is to look at the best practices and come back to the council with a recommendation on how many should be on the permanent commission. Right. Their job is really to get this up and running and help provide a sounding board as we go through the development of the airport layout plan and then get ready for the next round of DOT funding. But it's laying the groundwork for the permanent commission.
That being said, I got a letter the other day from a guy wanting to work on this, so
we'd put a notification out and do an application period. I've had several people put applications in already and look to probably appoint people at the second council meeting in December.
This is a Frank something, I can't
Sherman? Yeah.
What?
Sherman?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Navy Gold Wings.
Well, he's Air Force, sorry.
Oh, no.
We won't fault him for that, will we?
Is that enough to start, Lon?
Yeah, if there's anything else that council members think about, feel free to contact me on that. But we'll get it's not on our border commission application section now, so we'll add that to the form and then put a notification out to the public that we're accepting applications for that. Okay. Then the next item is the discussion regarding the upcoming Ward 4 vacancy that will occur as of the end of the year. There are a couple of ways that that vacancy can be filled. The council can elect to go directly to a special election, or you can do an appointment to that position. If you do an appointment, there's still an opportunity for the public to petition for a special election on that. Past practice has been to do an advertisement and take applications from people that live in that ward. Those come to the city council, they get reviewed, and then you do interviews, and then the council makes a selection of the person to fill the slot. The public then still has, like I said, the opportunity to petition for a special election if they would like to do that. So I just wanted to see before we started that process if council just wanted to stick with the past procedure or if you had strongly held feelings one way or the other on how we should do that.
Yes, for me, the appointment, I would go for doing an appointment, not go through another election.
What's the cost of an election?
Between $22,000 and $24,000.
Special election.
For a special election, yeah.
Well, I've been on council when, Paul Wren and a few other people got their seats by way of the appointment, and it seems to be a pretty fair and equitable way to choose, as long as you get somebody that is foolish enough to apply for the job.
That's you, Joe. Yeah.
Councilman Spinks joined the council that
Mayor,
way initially.
That would be Mayor Pro Tem.
And Nick, too. And Nick as well.
Nick, so there you are.
What were we thinking, Nick?
But 2 years is a long time also. You might give some consideration that some of those appointments haven't been for a 2-year period.
Okay. Well, we'll put together then a schedule of events for when they would occur and then get a notification ready to send out to the public. I think by law it has to be filled within 40 days of the time at which the vacancy occurred, but we should be able to conclude the process before the end of this calendar year so that they could be ready to go as of January 1, so we'd have a full council right away.
I didn't get a chance to read all the literature that I got, but if we were to get a petition done asking for a special election, how many, seem like that's happened in the past also.
That would be controlling. I mean, if you make an appointment and then we get a petition, that will control the situation and we'll have to have a special election.
So the petition can come after the appointment?
It could come before or after.
Okay.
How long would it take to fill with a special election?
We have, I think there's a requirement that we can't set the special election has to be at least 60 days out, advance notice to the county so that they can print ballots and do everything else. Because we've got defined periods now for when we can do elections, we would just have to see when the schedule worked out to whether or not it would be a March or a May ballot or something like that.
Is there a ghost of a chance that the library would be ready for their ballot?
It depends. And the one thing I don't know that I was completely clear on with this was whether or not if you get the petition, if it requires you to use the next available election or, for example, if you'd have the choice of doing March or May if you wanted to avoid the expense of 2 special elections.
Right. On what you said, once we appoint someone, then they could still ask for an election?
Yes, the code says that the petition can come within 14 days of publication of the notice of intent to appoint or 15 or 14 days of the appointment. And we are required to publish a notice that we intend to appoint.
Interesting.
All right. Sounds like the council is supportive of going ahead with the appointment method that we've used in the past, so we'll go ahead and get that process started.
Okay.
If there's more
You count
discussion.
votes better than I do, but yes, go ahead.
Is that the case? I mean,
Yeah.
I guess my feeling is that if we're going to have an election that's going to cost us $22,000 in May, that if there's a way to do that, certainly we could do both the library and that council seat. Maybe name somebody, if somebody's foolish enough to want to do that from now till May, but
Is that feasible, to appoint somebody temporarily?
I haven't seen anything in the code that would allow for that. And the code does spell out you have to make an appointment within 40 days. And that would be 40 days of the first of the year, so.
Maybe February.
Yeah, so they wouldn't start serving until January, the end of January.
Well, but 40 days as opposed to May
Right.
is
But I'm saying it'd be in February, March, April, May.
that's a long period of time. It's almost half a year.
I'd encourage the library to move their vote up.
At this point, I just don't know for sure if they'll be ready for March or May, and where they're at in the process.
Get committed to.
Well, why don't we just move forward for the appointment and take care of that?
Okay.
Right? Okay. Yeah, let's get that done and get somebody up here. That'd be fine.
Then further down the agenda, we'll have number 5 is the resolution that was tabled for the establishment of reserved parking zones in the uptown area. As the council would have seen on the last agenda, we did receive and file quite a few letters in support of that from business and building owners. I think the concern from the building owner at 811 is probably something that's a philosophical issue, so I don't know that there's any particular way around that, but that'll be coming back for further council consideration.
Has anything changed?
At this point, no. I would say that one of the things that the council could consider is that we know that it's going to be temporary, but we don't know the duration of temporary. If the council so desired, you could direct staff to monitor the parking usage and to go back and revisit the issue after 6 months or something like that, so that we know that we're doing everything we can to keep it as temporary as possible. Timing-wise, the change wouldn't occur until April of next year, when the construction project would actually be scheduled to start. Shermco is the business in the corner building that would be affected by the reserved parking. Their lease is up at the end of 2017. I don't know, at this point they haven't made any announcements on whether they intend to stay in the uptown or not, so there's an opportunity there. But at a minimum, I think we would intend to monitor it from the staff side to see what we could do to figure out what times of day it's actually being utilized by their staff, so that we have some ammunition and data to go back with them to potentially say, well, we've got it reserved now from 8 to 5, but when you really need it is from 6 to 10 on a consistent basis. Can we change the signage to make it more available throughout the day? But we don't have that data right now because they're not parking exclusively in those spots. So for us to make that determination, they would actually have to have exclusive use of those spots for a while that we could monitor, and then go back to them and say, well, we've been watching it for 3 months, and here's the times of day that you're actually using them. Can we discuss the issue again?
The language of the agreement gives you that flexibility?
The language of the agreement just basically says that we have to have a mutually agreeable parking solution.
So it's flexible that you can go back and renegotiate based on their actual usage?
Right.
Is the renter speaking for the owner?
For which one?
The one building.
No, the owner is fully aware of what's going on. It's been negotiated they have a person acting as kind of their property manager that was the one that went back to Iowa Realty and Shermco to act as the intermediary on it.
Well, what would happen if they broke their lease and left early?
If they left early, it's tied to that business. There's a couple of triggers in there. If the need for the parking goes away, then we have another opportunity to go back and talk about the issue some more. Or if the parking ramp project materializes, then those spots automatically move.
The reserved parking is tied to the business. Is that what you said?
Oh, it's actually tied to the property.
Oh.
But if the business that's creating the demand for it is leaving and something else different is going in there that doesn't have the same parking demands, we have an opportunity to be able to go in and renegotiate.
It has just occurred to me that what if, during the building of this proposed parking ramp also, those 2 businesses on 11th Street were to be moved, would they get the same consideration that the tanning booths did, insofar as finding a new place locating a new place and having all their stuff changed and all this? Would they get that consideration also?
No, this is a private sector-led project. The city has no involvement in the property acquisitions or anything like that, so that's all handled on the private side.
The other situation was for street modifications, and it was a state mandate that we would move. If they were moved, then we would pay.
That was a city
But
project.
that was because of that grant that was given.
Yeah, this is different.
But that was a city project. This is a private project. The developer's building the building. They would have to deal with that.
But what if the lady doesn't want to move her beauty shop,
She's actually, from my understanding, is talking to the developers that she would occupy most of the first floor of the new structure, the one that would face 11th Street.
But what would she do in the meantime? There's a nice house over here on 12th Street that the
Used to
city
be.
owns that was a beauty salon.
I don't know if it would hold the number of chairs that she has in her facility, but that's, again, that's something that they have to handle as part of the redevelopment package. They would have to find a temporary location for her, but it's not something the city would be involved in.
The owner would have to do that.
The builder who's going to be developing the new building and the parking ramp would have to do that.
Thank you.
Yep.
Well, concerning this issue, the mayor had asked about, have we talked to the Granger House at all about their parking lot?
No, we haven't.
Is that something that maybe we could do before?
That would be a good idea.
You could. And the only thing I would say is, the language in there stipulates that it's supposed to be something that's mutually agreeable, and I don't know that if we're asking them to move that far down, that would be something that would be agreeable to them.
We haven't asked them yet, though.
No, we haven't, because this is the agreement that they've signed off on, so we need some action on the council on it, one way or the other.
There seems to be the beauty shop owner seems to be the one that's affected on this. Could we offer them reserve parking for her business? There's about 5 or 6 spots right there in front of hers. Why can't we give her reserve parking?
That would certainly be an option for council. I mean, the council's got control over the use of the parking in any of the areas around it. So if you wanted to do something on 8th Avenue or something like that, you could. One thing I would again remind the council is that the next associated part of this is going in and reconfiguring the parking in the areas immediately adjacent to the building. And in this 11th Street area, we would be gaining 5 more parking spaces, which is the same amount that we're proposing to reserve on that area. So there's not actually going to be a reduction in parking that would be available for that business or for her customers. It's just 5 of them would be reserved for Shermco, but the new spots that would be created would still be available in that area immediately adjacent to the building. So I don't know that the conditions really are going to change that much from what is there today, other than those first 5 spots next to 8th Avenue would no longer be ones that would be available. You'd have to go a little further up the street.
Lon, the only reason I ask about it is that, about the Granger House, we're gaining 8th Avenue parking as well. And I've told you and I've told everyone here, I'm struggling with this thing. As a downtown building owner, I just hate to set a precedent, because I know when we close 7th Avenue to redo that project, parking is going to be such an issue. And I hate to be opposed to things, but I'm trying to convince myself that this is a good thing. I'm trying hard. I believe in the Art in the Alley project.
It's one of those things that when you start looking into whether or not you're really establishing a precedent, you have to take a look at the conditions that are existing here. You have a business that's donating 3,000 square feet of property and also 12 parking spaces that they have right now for their exclusive use. I mean, that was one of the things that was lost in the discussion when the economics of what their donation was they looked at land value versus the value of parking on the street and didn't address the value of the parking that they were giving up. And that, to be a fair analysis, you really have to consider that from both sides. So you have, in this case, you have this building and 3 other buildings that are donating property to the public to use for an alleyway improvement project. The opportunity for something like that with these circumstances to happen again in the uptown area is pretty remote. So I think it through on terms of establishing a precedent, I don't know that there's another block in the uptown area where you'd have this kind of circumstances come forward again. The only other one that really exists that might fit that bill would actually be the block behind your building, Paul, where there's several other private parking spots that could, maybe someday something could be done with that area, but it's not on the radar screen now. So I'm not really concerned about the precedent side of things so much on this one. The other thing I would say is that, it's one of those issues for council that you have to weigh the relative benefits and the relative costs. We have one building owner and one business owner who has concerns about the project, and I don't want to discount that she has very strongly held feelings. At the same time, you've received letters from the other 24 building and business owners that are immediately impacted by this, impacted in the same way, that are in support of the project. And just about any type of thing that you do, if you get 96% support on something, there's politicians that would kill to have anything close to half that number. So you kind of have to weigh those needs, but that's the council's responsibility, is to weigh that public good versus the needs and the concerns of the individual.
But what if, now I counted it up and there were 235 names on a petition not to allow this reserved parking. What if those people who probably sporadically shop in Marion decide, hey, we don't have to shop here at all, and just keep going, take Highway 100 out, and you lose their business entirely? Then what have you gained? Just trying to play devil's advocate.
I have 3 comments. One, we did have this petition of 100 names, I guess.
235.
200 names, and which the public hasn't seen, but we have copies of that. This agreement for this parking was made in April. Is that correct?
That was for the easement, yes.
The easement, and they gave up those spots at that time. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
But the council, we weren't apprised of this until about 2-3 weeks ago, a month ago. So we didn't know this. We didn't know that when we accepted, if we accepted anything in April, that we had a parking issue at that time. We didn't know that. That was.
We did actually include the map, but we covered it very briefly in April. I don't know that we went into
Well, it didn't have the
detail,
impact that it has today.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying.
It wasn't covered in that.
We didn't know that until now. And once again, I would reiterate we do have some control over the Granger House, and that is up the street. People talk about not a parking but a walking problem. And I want to also state that we are for the Art in the Alley project, and we don't. If this was to fail, doesn't mean that the Art in the Alley project is on hold or failed or anything like that. That's not what we're here for. And I don't want to see that they're tied together on this, because this is 2 separate situations, in my opinion. We're definitely not here to stall or hinder that alley project at all. That's something completely different. But it's this parking, I think we do have to resolve. Anything else?
If we're going to do reserve parking, what do you think about letting her have six or 7 parking spots in front of her building? We're going to do reserve
Well, the parking on that side of the street is 2 hour, and across the street on the west side of 11th Street is 4 hours, right?
But that's where the reserve ones will be, is on the west side.
To me, that's more problematic, because, I mean, it's not ideal to reserve the public parking. I mean, unless there's special circumstances. The special circumstance is that these property owners are giving up property rights in favor of the public. That gives some justification to having permit parking, for their building. What has this salon owner given up? That's just, to me, that's contradictory to what we're talking about here. I mean, with all due respect to her, but I mean, she hasn't given up anything.
You're talking about 2 different type of clients too, though.
I understand, but I don't think that you should just reserve public space for parking just that easily. I mean, there should be a very good justification for it. I mean, what about? I mean, she wants the use of those spots that are near her store, right? I I mean, what about the new spots that have been created? Can't those be reserved for? I mean, the new spots that you found, can't those be reserved or made permit parking for the building owners, for the two businesses?
Yeah, that would be something that would be probably a neutral impact because they're not parking now. There'd be some that would be adjoining her building on the 8th Avenue side, and then there'd be the extra ones that would be gained in that center 11th Street area. That's entirely up to the council what you want to do with those. You've got discretion on what happens with the assignment of parking.
She's not giving up stuff, but she's getting forced to not have parking in front of hers because of what's happening across the street.
Yes, there's so much parking around there, and if you drive by at any hour of the day, hardly any of that parking is being used. There's a lot of extra parking down 8th, down 11th.
Yeah, I see them right here.
Well, when I go to a beauty salon, and believe me, I need to go, I do not want to even walk a block out of my way because of weather or whatever after I've spent $100 looking beautiful again.
Well, that's why I'm asking if there's a way that those spots that are near her store could not be reserved and reserve the new spots that you've found or some, so that those would still be available for her shop.
Oh.
The way I see it, though, you're taking away 5 right in front of Shermco, but you're adding 5 more on 11th. So there's no...
It's not that far away is what you're saying.
And plus on 8th Avenue, there's adding... Is it not the same amount?
Excuse me. But I guess what bothers me is when you first showed us that schematic where the parking places were going to be utilized for the art in the alley, it was not mentioned what was going to take the place of these parking places. And I guess, from what I hear out and about, that people are very upset about reserving parking on a public street, that this is not a really good idea. They're going to start putting in requests for rebates on their property taxes.
I don't think it's unusual, though. I mean, I did try to see if it's done in other places. And there are cities that have permit parking for buildings along certain sections of streets, whether it's residential buildings. And I mean, I tried to kind of research and see if other cities do that.
I've never seen one.
Well, I mean, I found some, where they have permit parking. But, I don't know, do you have any comment on that? Did you find any others? Did you look around to see what other cities have done, or
there
how
are
common
cities
it
that
is,
have.
or what's your experience?
There are cities that have permit parking. Some of the more common ones are actually university communities, where the university might be somewhere close to a residential neighborhood. To prevent student parking from encroaching out into the residential neighborhoods, they will issue permits to the permanent residents, or each property gets so many permits associated with it for on-street parking. Shorewood, Wisconsin, I believe, has a system along those lines. There's one that pops right to mind. But while it's not something I've seen that's usual and customary in Iowa, it is something that is done.
Well, I just thought that, I mean, apparently she feels strong enough to have all the petitions that, even though she doesn't have, something that she gave up to allow this, I feel like we ought to offer her reserved parking as well. 5 spots.
I wasn't suggesting that she should give up anything. I was just saying that there's, apart from her issue, which is, valid and perfectly fine. I mean, what sets her apart from this other issue is that they're giving up property rights to their property and saying the public can come on this private property and use it.
Yeah. Is that something Maybe you could contact her and ask if
Yeah,
that
we can
would be-
contact her and see if there'd be an interest in that.
Is that okay if at least contact
Take
her?
a separate action, but yeah.
And that, can we agree to do that?
It can't hurt to see what she says.
Okay, thank you.
And then the next several items are really all related to that. Those are items that were up through number 9 were tabled because we need to have the parking situation settled before we proceed with approving the project calendar and with the bid letting on the Art in the Alleys project. Number 10 is a payment to Martin Gardner Architecture that was tabled from the prior meeting. Actually, what we've found is that it should have been amended from the prior agenda to be the next payment instead of number 24. Number 24 had actually already been approved and paid, so we have to amend this to make it number 25 so that it's correct. And then we have number 13, which is a public hearing to accept the construction documents for the downtown facade program. We have solicited bids for the facade improvement program and received those, and we are ready to recommend award to Renaissance Restoration Incorporated for that. Sure.
We're actually going to be, staff is recommending that we hold the public hearing open until the December 17th meeting. After the final bid came in, Martin Gardner and Uptown Marion have had meetings with every participating property owner, and so they're making small revisions to the plans and then securing the property owner acknowledgement forms, and they anticipate not being able to have those until the second meeting in December. So if that public hearing could be held open, that resolution awarding the bid would be back on the agenda at that second meeting in December.
Number 15 is a motion to receive and file the updated population and housing counts through the Census Bureau's, what we call it the GUPSI program. Basically, these are the housing count increases that were transferred over to the city of Marion from the recent annexations of the county subdivisions. This program allows you to go in and rather than doing a special census of that area, they will simply take the certified count that area had out in the county and add it to your base count. So the subdivisions on Brookside Drive and the ones on 10th Street and the one off of Albernet Road that have recently been annexed have now been transferred over to the city and added to our population counts. Number 16 is a public hearing regarding an amendment to the Commerce Corridor Urban Renewal Plan. This is for the Coben Hervey building, more locally known as the Parks and Smith and Sorg Pharmacy building. The owner of that, Franz Community Investors, is going to be renovating that structure, redoing the downstairs, doing historic restoration on the outside, and putting 3 residential units upstairs. The council had seen his presentation along with the layout of what he intends to do to that building. Then number 20 is a cybersecurity appliance, along with support for it for 1 year. This is something that's a continuing part of the City of Marion's technology upgrades. You heard the police department talk about the need to stay current. In order to maintain the security of our system, we also need to make sure that we stay current on the cybersecurity side as well. We have data in there that personnel records, things like that we have, medical information that gets maintained on our computer systems that we have to make sure that we protect. I believe this is one that's a scheduled replacement.
I've made some calls on this cybersecurity appliance, and the FireEye technology that we purchased or will purchase is excellent. It's good for up to 5 years. The price that we paid of $28,000 is a pittance of what it should be. In talking with the IT individuals here, it could be as high as $200,000 or more, and he got a year-end sale for something like $29,000. And our yearly cost after this is about $8,000 a year, which is incredibly cheap. This is an absolute bonus for the city to have something like this at this price. It's amazing.
Mhm. Yeah, Terrell is nothing if not a bargain hunter.
You've got a good one.
So are we still using the security folks out there east of Marion? Are they a backup for our system?
In Volta?
Oh, in Volta, yeah.
Actually, one of the things that we will be doing is transitioning away from having our own servers at City Hall, and we'll be starting to migrate all of our stuff over to their server systems instead. It's getting increasingly more expensive to maintain servers, and for when we looked at the full financial analysis over 5 years, it's actually cheaper to house it on their stuff, and then we're just paying a fee. We don't have to buy equipment. They take care of maintenance and upgrades. And frankly, if you go out and look at the kind of stuff that they have, we couldn't afford to buy it.
Right.
It's much more high-quality systems.
So we're transitioning over to them, but where does this fit into that?
There will still be a gateway at City Hall because the physical connections come into this building, and so even though, if you think about it, that's really just no different than if it was a giant building between here and in Volta. It goes over the fiber and goes there, so we still need to make sure that we're protecting our systems at the gateway coming in.
Oh, okay.
Number 20, this was starred for mayoral appointments. Not something that I was directly involved in, so.
Number 20 or?
Oh, 25, sorry.
Well, if you look at 24 too, you have a J there, Melissa Monroe from who is a replacement for. That's a new appointment also.
Okay.
But I'll go along with that individual. That's fine. On all these appointments, I've made it clear that if an individual wanted to be reappointed, just let me know. And for all of these appointments, I have yet to receive a phone call from any of these individuals that we are going to replace. And so we have these appointments. All these appointments come along on a yearly basis with all of these committees. I think we have over 100 individuals or more that are appointed to these committees. So there's always resignations and reappointments, redesignations for individuals as they go. So there's always the opportunity for individuals, and we've always put out that we need people to apply all the time, and we've had these individuals request to be appointed to these boards, and since we had these openings, it made a good fit, and so that's why we've done these. We've got 20. Well, we have on 24 and 25, you have quite a few, and that's a typical deal. At the end of the year, every year you have appointments, and it's a typical situation. Happens all the time.
If I could, Your Honor? If I could?
Oh, Mike, go ahead.
Typically, in the past, you say that none of these individuals that were up for reappointment have reached out to you. Typically, you have asked, or the staff has asked, out of the administrative office to have the department reach out to those individuals and solicit whether they want to be reappointed or not. I have distributed that list back to you that indicates that the 3 individuals within that are on our park board have requested to be reappointed to the board. As you know that you and I have met off to the side and discussed this issue, and I just want you to know that I have the utmost respect for you and the position that you're in as mayor of this community, but I have to respectively disagree with your recommendation not to reappoint the 3 current members of our park board. That's Patty Weiss, Charlie Kress, and Terry Spiro. Very community-minded individuals. dedicated to the job that they do as members of the park board, very responsible, very objective. They've proven their leadership over the years, guiding the Parks and Recreation Department. All three are very, very forward-thinking, capable of making solid, fact-based decisions that aren't always possible, but overall are in the best interest of this community. They've always been very supportive of the City Council's strategic plans and the council objectives. And I would still go with my recommendation that is in the council memo to reappoint these three park board members. Thank you.
Well, that's very well and taken into consideration. And once again, I reiterate, we know we've got some new individuals that are ready with bushy tails and ready to support you 100%. I've interviewed these people and told them that. And I don't think you're going to find any problems at all with that, Mike. I think you're going to be able to have keep going along with what you've got. I don't think you're going to find any problems at all. I'm sure you'll agree.
I respectfully do not agree, and I find it hard to wrap my arms around why we would want to appoint three new individuals when we have members that have proven track records on a board that are doing excellent work for the community. Why we would want to remove them from a board. I just don't find the logic in it.
Once again, maybe you and I should have another sidebar, and I'll explain one more item for you, sir.
I would appreciate that.
Very well. Want to go move on to your discussion of your photographs, sir?
Yep, with the new council election, we need to get some photographs scheduled. Just needed to get that arranged. We have a map out in the foyer that we use that shows the council and puts the council pictures out there along with your ward, along with the at-large members. So if you don't want to have your picture retaken for the incumbent council members, that's perfectly fine, but it's also an opportunity to have it redone if you would like to. So if you just want to let Tracy in my office know, we'll see what dates the majority of the council would prefer to use and then get it scheduled.
I think you just use my old one is good enough.
So if I have one, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, is this a group picture or just
Individual.
just individual?
She'd prefer to do both, yeah.
Oh, you're going to do both on this date? Or
Yeah, don't you
One or
wanna
the
wait
other.
till we have the seventh person on?
Question I'm going to ask.
Yeah, we'll wait until after we get the appointment done. That's why we're looking at January. The 7th or the 21st in January are the two dates that we're looking at. So if there's one that works better for the majority of the group, we could go ahead and schedule it now. But I thought that you might need to have a chance to take a look at your calendars and then let us know which one, maybe on Thursday, which dates look the best.
The 21st probably you would have by appointment Nick's replacement, so maybe the 21st would be the better.
I would actually expect that we would, that the council would take action on doing the appointment for Ward 4 at the second council meeting in December, and then just actually swear them in on January 1st so that we could start the new year with the full council.
That's what they did with me.
Whatever works.
I have a new picture, so I can send it to Tracy.
Is it a pretty picture?
It is. You saw it up on the billboard.
Photo bomb.
Photo bombs, right.
Okay. Anything else?
So take a look at calendars, and if you could just let us know on Thursday, then we'll get it scheduled.
Paul, you have something?
The only thing I had is that, it's difficult, I'm sure, on these boards. And you haven't heard from the people that are on there, and I think that'd really be important, even though the staff is answering for them. But if we have other people that are interested in serving on boards, I would think there wouldn't be a whole lot of reason why we couldn't increase some of those boards. We have that authority, and if we have someone who really wants to be on the park board and they didn't have that opportunity, maybe we could add a member or two.
Yeah, we actually, I think it was maybe 2008 or 2009, we increased the size of that park board from 3 to 5 because of the scale of the park's budget is a lot bigger than it used to be. There's a lot more facilities underneath their control, but the size of those boards, other than the ones that are mandated by state law, are under the discretion of the council.
Yeah, the park board particularly, we're adding parks. They have more responsibility. Slug brought up snow removal, grass cutting, enormous responsibility they've taken upon just cutting the grass around the corn hinge out there as an example. That's a big job, and it's also a big job to do all the snow plowing they're doing, and maybe that board, maybe we should make that consideration if we have people that are really interested. That's all I had.
Cool.